All right. Well, today we have no, I guess it's not former. You're always a national champion. 2014 national
Exactly.
champion with little T OSU, the Ohio State Buckeyes. Played for the Redskins, played for the Buccaneers in the NFL, and is now the current CEO of Project Alpha, Evan Spencer. Thanks, man.
Hey, how's it
Appreciate your
going,
time.
man? Absolutely. Anytime. I'm glad to be on.
It's a good day to be alive. So I purposely did not tell you this the multiple times that we've spoken since we met, but Ohio State is like my least favorite team of all time, like right next to like the
Yeah.
Philadelphia Eagles. I
Well,
can't.
I hope that I can do my best to like give a sliver more of a bit of love on
No,
this side.
I mean, you have to have villains, right? Like everybody, you
Very
need a
true.
villain. I hate the Patriots, but
Yeah.
sports are better when they're good. I hate the Yankees, but you know what I mean. So I don't mind Ohio State being good, but I have a very good friend of mine. I
Mm.
was in his wedding; he's going to be in mine, and he went to Ohio State. So I think there's that extra level of hatred because
Yeah.
I want him to be sad all the time because we're really good
Yeah, you got to
friends.
give him crap. Trust me. I
Exactly.
mean, hey, I went to high school in Chicago, so though you probably don't know much of the dynamic, a lot of people like to hate on the Ohio State fan there, and then obviously you tie in all of my family ties. Anytime, I think that when we played LSU in the national championship, and we unfortunately got routed, that was definitely a time where everybody like probably had like 50 to 70 text messages in my phone, just like, "Oh, Evan, are you watching the game?" Like, no, of course, I'm watching this, this terrible game or
Oh
whatever.
goodness.
Uh, Definitely can feel that. So, but
Good
no,
stuff.
where's your team? If you don't mind me asking, who's your
Well,
team?
so yeah, so that's actually that's the thing. So I grew up a Penn State fan because my
Okay.
grandfather was a big Penn State fan, and a few years back I decided, you know what, I don't really want to be a Penn State fan anymore, for a couple different reasons. So I absolutely do not root for Penn State anymore, but some of that hatred still sticks around. So I still pay attention to the Big Ten all the time. I still see what's going on,
Yep.
um, and now it's kind of cool. Like I'm a pretty just agnostic college football fan. I just love this sport. Um,
Totally.
so I'm just there for the game. I mean, the best game I watched all year was the Clemson Ohio State game. Whoever won,
Yeah.
it didn't matter. That was the best
True.
game I was going to watch all year.
Very true.
So I'm all for it. But yeah, I wanted to hold that back until we clicked record. Just so
Yeah. No,
I'm a
that's
real
totally
person.
good.
Honesty, integrity, transparency. I'm all about it. Once that record button's clicked. So,
I'm with it,
but
man. I'm with it.
I really do appreciate you hopping on today, even after I bash you a little bit. But you're the one who won the national championship,
All
so
in good fun.
doesn't
Yeah.
really matter. So yeah, man. The first question I want to ask, and I ask this to everybody, is where does your love of sports come from?
Hmm. My love of sports, I feel like in my background and realistically from my family, it's so centered around football from day one. I don't want to say that that was really the direction as to why I chose football, why, I have all these other athletic passions of mine. But, I think for me, it was really just a way to express myself on the field. Like if it was football, I knew that, as I was finding out my body could do some certain things that were, better than others. I was either running faster, cutting better, etc. Right? But like for me, it's not like an art, like I'm painting a picture or whatever. But I mean, it's just like executing things that you have a skill set for, right? It's a good feeling, and obviously you get a lot of you know happy feelings, etc. from it. So for me, that's probably where it all started, right? I mean, I think that football I have such a long history in, but across many different sports growing up, whether that was track or whether that's golf or others. I just I always found my most expressive self while being out there playing, having fun with others.
Absolutely, man. It's in. So you brought up art for a second, and I always think people, in my opinion, the coolest job you could possibly have is get paid to be a creative, right? Like you get to be
Right.
expressive, you get to do what you want, and football that can be a creative outlet for you, right? You can do things, as you said, that you're finding out your body's doing these new things that, especially when you're
Totally.
younger, you're like, whoa, I had no idea I could do that,
Yeah.
right? So
And
it's
first
really
and
cool.
foremost, let me tell you that that was painful too, right? So like figuring out that I was going to stretch out to 6'2" in a couple months, I didn't really think that my knees were going to be as bad as they were. So
Yeah,
there's some give and take there, but all in all, again, it just kind of speaks to the fun of going out there with at the time some of my best friends, and then just playing and competing.
yeah, man. No, it's awesome, and just being able to go out there, as you said, and have fun and get paid to do that is also just a great way.
It's a blessing. It really
Yeah,
is.
I mean, there's really no other thing that I mean, what kid doesn't grow up saying, hey, I want to do be a professional athlete in some way,
Right.
shape, or
Right.
form, right? You know?
So, I mean, and just to think about this from like a perspective standpoint, most individuals are coming up from that, like looking outside in, wanting to grow up and be there. Like when I was that age playing backyard football at Thanksgiving or whatever, right? Like I had already gone to every bowl game for Ohio State since, say I'm 10 at this point for the last 9 years, right? So I've watched Eddie George won a Heisman. I have a picture next to his Heisman trophy as a little kid with glasses that were more circular than these, right? So like as I watched all these individuals go through it, you talk about like a burning desire for excellence, but then realizing that holy cow, I have a talent, a gift, and that gift might actually enable me to start figuring out ways to make money, and really try to build out what that athletic career could look like. It's exciting to kind of chase down, a lot of those pathways. But for me, it was just such a unique perspective to watch and learn from guys that were doing it as I was young.
That's amazing. I did not know that you were such a big Ohio State fan growing up the whole time. I mean, that's some storybook stuff, then. That's incredible.
So yeah, I think it'll be worthwhile to pare back slightly here. So context here, my dad played here at Ohio State. He went to high school in St. Clairsville, Ohio, and played football here at Ohio State. Is the fifth leading rusher in Ohio State history now. A couple of my friends have passed him, which is kind of funny. But no, all in all, he went into the USFL and then actually played for the Chargers for 6+ years. But that said, I was born in San Diego. We moved back here to Columbus when my dad was coaching with the Ohio State Buckeyes. He got a job as a running backs coach after retiring. So for 10 years, running backs coach for Eddie George, right? I think he either recruited or had Antonio Pittman his first year, but Jonathan Wells, he had Maurice Claret, a lot of these other names that are very prominent from a output on the field perspective. My dad was their coach, their mentor as they were growing up. But then bringing it back down to Evan Spencer, the kid on the on the show now, it's I was looking up to that. Right? I was the dude who slipped through a couple players' pads at practice and was in the offensive huddle as Craig Krenzel's getting ready for the '02 national championship. Right, like that happened. Coach Tress was laughing. I'm sure my dad was cussing me off the field. So like, but again, right, like you take those perspectives. And for me, realizing then as I got to high school that I could compete at a high level and that level was higher than everybody else that I was playing with, right? It's like, holy cow, okay, now's my time. I have all of these assets or tools that I can now use from an experience standpoint and hopefully let that be to my benefit going forward.
And as you said, I mean, that tool belt had to have been so full, man. I mean, just being there from such a young
Yeah.
age and being able to see that. I mean, that's always one thing, the big stage, the big lights. I mean, you were there since you were, what, 9? Like, that's insane. Like, being in the huddle in '02, like, that's an amazing story. First off, that's hilarious.
That's practice, right? But
yeah,
still,
like,
very much.
But I mean, being there and seeing the intensity, seeing the players, seeing the coaches and what they're going through, that almost becomes second nature to you at that point. So when you do finally get there, it's not as big as a step as some of these other guys are going through, right? It's a lot. It's obviously it's different, but at the same time that it's such a smaller gap that you have to get over that I could see that playing a huge role in you being calm, cool, collected, and poised in such big games such as the 2014 national championship.
Yeah. So let me not belabor the point too long here, but I'll add another. So my brother, though he walked on at Northern Illinois, now is the national scout for the Washington Redskins. So they divide the country into halves. So he and another individual take the nation. But that said, he's been for the last 8 to 9+ years been scaling his way through the organization with the Washington Redskins. Okay, so you remember where I was drafted, right? So come draft day, I'm in the basement figuring out, oh shoot, I played against that guy. We kicked their butt, and that dude sucks. I'm better than him. But these are all just thoughts as you're wishing your name goes off the ticker. But then I get a call from a number I'm not expecting. Click it up, and I hear my brother's voice, and the first thought immediately is like, all of the stories you hear of friends that give prank calls.
Yep.
Like, oh no, you're not drafted, but hey, how's it going? So that was the first thought. I'm like, cool, wait, what's going on? He's like, dude, we're about to pick you in the 6th round of the 187th pick. And at the time, he's the Northeastern scouts didn't get to call the draft picks, but from that perspective, it was that he did. And I bring this whole crazy, unique story up to say that, like, again, to build on an additional perspective, right? Like, my brother helped counsel me in terms of what agent I was going to pick. I stayed at my brother's place while I was there, and while there, we were talking about just potential personalities in the organization, how to position yourself with relationships. Like, these guys work hard, these guys don't, and if you bust your butt, you probably have a good chance. Just real type of
Mm-hmm.
objective conversations. But not many people, next to nobody, had that option. So for me, it's like, again, right? Like, I got this tool belt that's just weighing me down, but you can either sit there and have it be heavy, or you can have a million assets that are all kind of behind you. And that was at least my positioning, and still is.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great analogy. I mean, yes, it can weigh you down because of expectations and because of all these other things. Obviously, your dad played. Your brother is clearly very, very, very well off within the organization at the time. And, but if you start taking out those tools and using them in whatever situation, that tool belt gets a little lighter and you get a little, you can do your job a little bit better. So
Exactly.
I think that's a great analogy and is absolutely fantastic. So I do obviously want to get to, the draft story. That's just awesome. I mean, what are the chances? That is just so cool. I mean, I hope
it was crazy.
Like, that is, as you said, not too many people. And just like, just a couple stories that you brought up. I mean, Mohamed Sanu, I think I went to Rutgers. So that one's always very famous among campus, that a bunch of people found his number and just started calling him, told him he got drafted. And then, he actually did eventually get drafted by, I think, the same team, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember exactly what it was, but there's so many stories like that. And I could totally understand it. Maybe not to that extent, but I could totally get where you're coming from and understand and wanting to be drafted and saying, hey man, like, we killed them. Why is he going before me? Like, I torched that defensive back. What is he doing going up this high? So it is very interesting. There's obviously, in professional sports, you have to have some ego, right? Like, you have to know.
There's got to be a version of separation once talent is matched, right? And that's mindset. Right.
Yeah.
So it can be labeled ego, it can be labeled mindset, how you approach and attack the field, all kind of referencing the same thing.
And I think it is awesome. So with that, so you're at Ohio State. You win a national championship. You guys beat Alabama in that game. That game was insane. I remember staying up late to watch that. Completely roll the Ducks. That was a joke. So really, the national championship was you versus Alabama, Ohio State, Alabama that year. But you beat Oregon, so it is what it is. I mean, what is that like? I mean, again, growing up, being at the practices in 2002 with Coach Tressel, with your father, seeing what these guys are going through, as you've already name dropped a couple of the incredible Ohio State running backs that your dad got to coach and mentor. What is that full circle moment when you get to touch the trophy, when you get to lift the trophy, knowing that this is kind of been coming for the last 10 years, 12 years at this point?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of hard work to get there, but
of course.
I think that it was just such a surreal moment. I mean, like, there's even more that we can get into here in a bit, but like, I don't know, for me even more so, and obviously my dad having been there in 2002 and having rushed the field, and and earlier in that year having taken the picture with C. Grant, been on the front of the Plums Dispatch, like, it gets crazier. But for me, it was just more or less the fact that, like, we, in my career when I got to Ohio State, the year before, which at the time I didn't think I did absolutely anything wrong, and I'd still take that stance, but had to make a public apology afterwards because of it, which we can comment on later. But when at the time we had won like 22 or 23 games in a row, and we had to do media after a practice, and at the time, Florida State and Alabama were two of the other undefeated teams. And it wasn't set up yet to where we were going to have the chance to play them. And reporters were asking, well, how do you think you'll fare? Right. So an individual who's trending to be captain of his team in the next year to come, having won 22 to 23 games straight, took the stance of, hey, I know that I'm taking my guys against everybody, and we're going to wipe the floor against anybody we play. That includes Florida State and Alabama. I got a call from my brother before I got back to my house that day. And he just said, turn on ESPN.
Oh, no.
I turned on ESPN, and Skip Bayless and Stephen A were going in on me for a while. But then, got to the Alabama game. So I bring that funny story up to tell you that, like, for me, it was also an additional or piece of extra credit in the fact that, like, I had that happen to me personally in my junior year, right? And realistically, no fault of my own. I don't see any wrongdoing in that. You want me to be honest, but then to then say, okay, well, we get to play, the team that won that year, the team that was number one, right? We get to then have our shot at them. Did they lose, guys? Sure, yeah, but here and now we get to play them and to out physical them in a game where they're seen as the dominant force in football, right? And just to take it to them drive after drive and not be scoring off of, from a consistent standpoint.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
my play was a trick play, but like not be, tricking whatever them all the way down the field, but figuring out structural ways how to beat a physical football team. Like that was so huge for me. And then obviously going on and rolling over Oregon was kind of a foregone conclusion after that. But again, long-winded way of kind of painting this perspective for why it was so important to me. But obviously there's family and the personal reason for the media. You're
Mm-hmm. And with the media, I mean, as you said, like, you didn't do anything wrong. Like, of course you should say, I think my team's going to win. Like, of
exactly.
course you should say, I'm pretty confident, look at these guys. They're incredible. We just crushed Wisconsin 59-0 or whatever it was. But at the same time, like, there might have been a better way to do it, I guess, right? Like that's the thing. That's the wisdom. That's the growth, right?
Exactly. It's all about the mechanism of delivery, right? Like, now hindsight looking back at this, and there were learning lessons. Do I take the stance that, like, we still beat them, so I had that kind of confidence and that mantra behind me? Yeah. But in the instance when the question is asked, right, to take a moment to intake the question, breathe, right, and then just say, yes, hey, while I actually do feel that we as a program can beat anybody that we play, I still respect the accomplishments and the achievements of other company or not other companies. Jeez, that's where my mind is.
I was gonna say you're there now. You're there now.
Where other teams are in the league or around the country, and if there are two that you're mentioning here, I think it would be a great game. But I feel confident in my guys, and I'm going to hold my thoughts to that. Right? That's the post having gone through it response, but the underlying Evan thought going in the back of my head is still the same. That you're asking an individual who's trending to be a captain of an organization that has not lost in over a year and a half, if they feel like they're going to beat another undefeated team. Of course, that's going to be my response.
Yeah. I mean, 100%. Why wouldn't it be, right? I mean, it's it makes sense, but that's also the 20-year-old kid, right? And now a little bit older, a little bit wiser. You've seen some more things. I mean, what's the great quote? Youth is wasted on the young, right? Like, there's so much that at 22 that I thought was 100% correct. That by 24 I was like, I'm an idiot. Like, what am I talking about? So the older you get, the more experience you have. It's kind of natural that you'll get better at talking in front of a camera, and you'll get better at saying the right thing just in a better way. And that's, I mean, that's politicking. That's playing the game, and everybody's kind of have to do it at some point or another. And I guess you learn the hard way, right? But hey, it's a lesson. So, and plus, you guys won, so who the hell cares? It doesn't even matter.
I mean, dude, you got to think, like, as I'm sure you're probably familiar with. All of us are 18 years old.
Exactly.
Thrown under the spotlight of tens of millions of Buckeye fans across the globe, and every sentence is scrutinized over. Is that too far? Where's the line that we're setting for this week? We can take an aggressive stance here, and you can't comment here. And literally 6 months ago, I was figuring out what my prom dress was going to be, and if we were all going to the water park together the next day, right? So, but for context. And I know this probably doesn't relate to you much because of your career in media, but for the standard individual who just went and continued to go to school, right? Like, they had their failures in college and then a few other ones, and then they started to learn from it, and now they're at a very good place. We all at Ohio State, given that it is a brand, right, had to get that maturity done in a 3-month time frame or shorter, right? So again, another one of those heavy pieces of wrench in this toolbox analogy that that helps us all. But at least for me, I kind of failed through my way on that process. And if you can do that by, not repeating the same failures and learning from them, then, you're going to be net positive at the end of the day.
Yeah, as long as you learn a lesson from it, it's not a failure. It might come off like that to some people, and you're right. I mean, I've been on those Reddit like forums and those Reddit boards, man. I mean, any college football fan base is insane.
Yeah.
You have these like 45-year-old dudes just, talking about what's going on. And again,
we don't know my split on that formation. You're
right.
Like, how can you sit there and tell me that I messed up there? Like,
it's incredible how scrutinized 18-year-old kids are. But you're right. Ohio State's a brand, and as we all know, there's a lot of money in college football, and there's a lot of. I mean, fan is short for fanatic. I'll hand up. I've said some things. As you see, I'm wearing a Giant sweatshirt. I'm sure I've said some very mean things. But it's all love in the end, and it's all because we love these sports. So it's just kind of how it works, man. It's just how it works. So you win the national championship your junior season, correct?
Senior season.
Senior season. Okay, so then you are then drafted that upcoming year. So first off, that wide receiving core was insane in college.
Yeah, we were ill for sure.
That was a lot of fun to watch. So getting drafted, having to wait till the 6th round. I mean, what is the draft process like? I've never actually gotten to ask someone who has been drafted. Like, what is that process like? I mean, you have the combine, you have all the media, you have, as we said, people scrutinizing every single play you've had throughout, your entire 4-year career. What is that like, and kind of what does that do to your psyche, or what does that do to your mental awareness and understanding, like all this negative shit is just coming out at like bombarding you just constantly?
It's honestly, it's such a interesting process that I never want to have to go through again. And I wish that it was, better. And I don't even really know how to define better yet, but for context, like, we got to think. So all of us then go, okay, now we're about to be drafted. And then we go immediately into training for draft prep, or for combine, or for pro day preparation. And then you go to the combine, the first day that you're there, mind you, you're going to have like 6 hours of sleep all 3 or 5 days that you're there. And then you're going to compete on the last day. But on all of those days prior, you're stepping into a room of 60 doctors, or at least 32 at a minimum lead doctors, that literally are just looking at you like, analyzing you like a piece of meat, which effectively that's what the business that's being run on is, you, right? But, I think you brought up a good point. Like, what does that do to a person's psyche that says, well, I'm still an intellectual person that can still add value to the world in these other areas. And yes, I mean, I get it, right? But sometimes certain individuals have issues like decoupling that, right? So then it bleeds into like, am I less than because now I'm only seen as being able to run a 4.3? Yeah, I can run a 4.3, but like, did you ask me if my foundation is saving millions of people's lives? Like, so from that perspective, I think it does put an interesting dynamic on a lot of athletes, and many over the majority come out on the top side with, a very sturdy mentality, but at its own right, you do go through this hyper evaluation phase where it is very physical, and it's how I'm evaluating your overall potential by what your body can physically output. There's pluses and minuses to that, both physically and mentally. But it's interesting. It's a trying process. It's fun when you get to do it with your friends, but when you got to fly across the country and you're doing it with a bunch of guys that you didn't really get the chance to play with, it adds another layer. You get on a team, and maybe you don't jive with the team, or maybe you do jive with the team. That's another layer, right? So it's just an interesting 6 months of your life, really.
Yeah, I mean, again, I literally cannot imagine what that is like. No one has ever examined my body and said, like, I wonder what your output is. Most people say, hey, you're all right at talking. I can only imagine, man. I can only imagine. But it's incredible you got to go through it. Again, I'm sure, as you said, you probably wish it was better, but I'm sure you wouldn't trade it for the world, because now, again, you've learned and you've had the opportunity to get drafted in the NFL, man. And that's I know we see 252, I think, every single year, but it's still a very, very small percent of the population, man. So I think it's incredible coming out of college. One interesting thing now that I just thought of it, like with winning the national championship, immediately then going into that process, was there any extra scrutiny? Was there any extra like target on your back from some guys from other teams or rival teams? Was there anything like that, or was it pretty much like by that time, hey, it's, I'm Evan Spencer now, draft eligible prospect? Or was it,
Yeah.
hey man, you just won a national championship, I want to get drafted before you?
Yeah.
Was there anything like that going on?
Honestly, I didn't feel that at all, which was so awesome. Like it's really like you cross this hurdle, and there's still some lingering attachments with our relations with those guys up north that play for Michigan, right? But for the most part, you cross that hurdle, and now it's just, hey, we all are the best of the best, getting paid to go, make art or create on the field, right? So at that point, you're kind of seen from that way. I will say what I kind of thought you were going to get to mentioning, George, which is fine, and I definitely could all in all, but the timeline of how that plays out, right? So season, or we'll just call camp, what's that, last week of July, all the way through November, your championship game December, bowl season all the way through December, first game at New Year's, practice all the way then to the bowl or to the national championship of, say, the middle of January, so 15th, and then you only get 3 to 4 weeks before the combine happens at the end of February, right? So now you're thinking about, oh, okay, well, that's combine training all the way to February. So then what happens after that? Oh, well, you're about to go into rookie minicamp, so you continue to train. Then you go into rookie minicamp, which is right around the draft time to get drafted. That goes all the way till the middle of July. Then you get a month and a half, which is your first time to really take a breath to finish a super long season plus training. You get a month and a half breath, and now guess what? Camp starts first week of July, and the NFL season is 16 weeks long, not 12 now, 16. So you see dudes who pop hamstrings, they'll do ankle injuries, etc. Right? But like, think of the timeline of how all of that happens and where you're expected to be physically and the demand that puts on your body.
I cannot imagine that. I've never done anything close to it, and that's why I've lived vicariously through people like you, Evan.
Well,
I appreciate. I get you. I get you.
It's important to shed light on it. I'm not.
Yeah, yeah. Oh no. You're perfect.
Yeah.
You're perfect. It is incredible. What all athletes across any sport put their bodies through, and especially football, with just the physical nature of it. The physicality of practice itself, as you said. With all of that happening, I'm sure it was a little different in college because of the extra rules and regulations. But once you're in the NFL, yes, there's rules and regulations, but let's be honest, you have to do what you have to do. You want to get paid. You want to become a superstar. You have to work harder than the next guy, and he's trying to work harder than you. So that is a very, very long year. I can understand some of the negative aspects of that coming out, and as you said, a lot of people get hurt in that time because your body needs time to rest, man. Your body needs time to rest. It's insane.
It really does. Yeah, it does. It does. It's sad, but like, you see some of the biggest names. It'll be unfortunate, but mark my words, some of the biggest names that'll go off the board in the first, second, and third round, there'll be a large number of hamstrings if those were teams that travel deep into the playoffs, or just like minor muscle injuries, because you're just asking so much of your body, right? But it's no different. If you are you're a lawyer going into the LSATs, and the LSAT tests are, say, X number of time of training and then the test, and then you go right into school, or in a different example, say you're in a financial analyst program at Goldman Sachs, and it's only going to be 2 years, and that's 2 years of grinding, and then there's going to be an exam for your Series 6 or 66 or your 3 or 7, whatever it's going to be. And then after that, it's okay, well, after this program, what's my next approach, right? It's all the same. Like, I feel like sports are great because it bleeds all of what the world's events are about to be together, right? And it makes you act objectively in the moment as quick as you have to. At that level, right?
Mm-hmm.
The decisions that you have to make are so quick that like it starts to prepare you for what those instances look like when the subject matter is not a piece of leather, but a pen on a deal that's been reviewed 30 times by legal. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. It is, you're in a very high level industry. You're doing something that is very coveted. So, as investment banking is a great example. I know some people that you don't have a life for 2 years in the investment banking world, right? Those first 2 years
Yeah.
are, well, what time did you get into the office? How much work did you do? And, hopefully you got your 3 hours of sleep last night.
Yeah.
And it is, that's just the way it is. I personally couldn't do something like that, or
Yeah.
want to, but, I mean, it's, you
A
have to
certain
do what you have to
personality.
do. Yeah,
For
exactly.
sure.
You have to
Yeah.
do. And then you also bring up a good point. I mean, the physical nature of what you have to do playing that long of a season. What about the mental aspects of all that? Again, going back to, again, getting hit over and over again. I mean, look at, just as an example, Andrew Luck. He didn't, he could have kept playing, right? We all kind of know that. He just didn't want to go through the rehabilitation process and getting hurt. Getting hurt's not fun. Like, we look at it, it's like, oh, this guy had back surgery. All right, well, we'll see him in 9 months. We'll see him in a year. Well, he's not just going to see himself in a year. He has to go through the rehabilitation. He has to go through the pain every single morning, and then the pain far after that. I mean, what's that aspect of it like with that, especially that long of a season?
Yeah, man.
That's got to
It's
be
crazy.
insane.
There isn't a player on any team that makes it through 16 weeks unscathed. I'm telling you, if you got somebody that raises their hand and says that, they're a liar, right? But as you start thinking about this, that means everybody to a man or a woman who's coaching, et cetera, right? Like every person there is going to have to play hurt. So mentally, let's think about this. I know that in a dangerous game where bodies are going to be flying around, my body can't give me 100% protection. So let's start thinking about the mental, stability of where my head has to be from a overall protection standpoint, trying to play hurt standpoint. Yeah, I broke my leg and that's a 6-month deal, but did anybody really think about the oxidation of the rust that's in my leg and how that's going to kick my 6 months to 9 months? But hey, in the media, the coaches and the offensive coordinators are getting drained by pressure. The reasons why Evan Spencer or Michael aren't on the field, right? So we got to get them out there. And guess what? You push them out there a little bit too soon, you plant the wrong way, and bad things happen. So, I think you bring light to a very important, another dynamic, right? It is the best and most fun game, and I feel like, from a preparation and a life standpoint, there isn't a sport that preps individual. I mean, golf's there too because I'm a golfer, so I can definitely say that that's another one. But from a standpoint of if you aren't there making the proper protections, analyzing whatever risk that you have going across the middle properly, you have a immediate physical response that will teach you not to do it again. Right? So again,
right.
Relations to life, exactly. So I don't know. I can go on tangents, and I probably got slightly off topic on the question, but
nope.
I think all of those are very important.
It all makes sense, and it's all something that we as just fans of the sport, wrongfully in most situations, your number, Saquon's number 26.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's on the field, the Giants have a better chance. And if he's off the field, that really stinks.
Totally.
And I want him on the field. I want him to stay healthy. But Wayne Gallman's coming in now, and let's see what he can do. Right? It's an unfortunate just nature of sports in general. Like, we want you to be healthy. I would never wish for anyone to get injured. But at the same time, once you are, it's okay, out of sight, out of mind. Like, what can this guy do, and how can the Giants win today? So it is what it is. And you make a great point. You will get an immediate reaction to going over the middle, and your body will be like, hey man, please don't do that again. That wasn't fun. And mentally, I mean, that's going to drain on you. That's going to do so much stuff. And I can only imagine what, having to go through that time and time again, day in, day out for that long of a season, that long of a year, specifically the one you're talking about where it starts in July. And then you have to go through all the rookie training camps and everything and the mini camps, and having to figure all that out is insane. I mean, that is just such a drain on your body, but mentally, just having, because you have to stay 100% mentally, because if you're not, you have a better chance of getting injured, right? It's just totally. It's this ridiculous kind of like back and forth where if you're not 100% mentally, you might lapse, you might go over the middle, you might make the wrong read, and you will get hurt. So your body will then say, hey man, we said not to do this. What are you doing?
Right. No, I mean, there's no doubt about it. I think that, right, like now relating that to like, hey, we have layoffs. There's an immediate response that I'm either going to, act unintentionally or, just say, hey, everything is happening to me, or I'm going to say, well, I'm providing unique value to this company, so I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to shine as much light on this as possible to know that that thing that's going to happen that I've been hearing about, right? It doesn't happen to me in my family, right? So I think that going over the middle to the point that we're talking about is a painful example or analogy of the latter version that I
Hmm.
just did, right? So again, it's just like how can you mold those types of things that you got yourself to in place once before into real life examples, right? And I
Absolutely.
think uh, so many great examples of guys that have done it incredibly that I'm looking up to. But there's also, a few examples that we in the media shedding light on, will help them because they aren't as successful at making that transition. And, giving help to those cats in any way possible, is one of the legacies I wish to leave. So if I'm belaboring it, I apologize. But
No.
I mean, it's just about care for people, really.
Yeah, I mean, caring for people is it's an innate human quality, right? It's an attribute that we all should be, practicing on a daily basis, not just doing, but practicing and actually getting out
Right.
there and doing something about it. And I appreciate that about you, man. That is awesome, and it's definitely something that um, I look forward to hearing more about and seeing your name more in the news because of all these good things that you're doing as well. Not
Yeah.
just the fact that you have done great things in the past, but because you're continuing to do good things in the future. So
Totally.
you already told us the story about getting drafted by the Redskins, your brother
Mm-hmm.
giving you a call. That is incredible. You were let go by the Redskins, right?
Mm-hmm.
Injury, if I'm not mistaken. If you want to dive into that story a little bit, what
Yeah.
was that like, and kind of getting the shot and then almost having it taken away from you immediately.
Yeah, no, I mean, it definitely was tough, right? So this was the first year of NFL's concussion protocol. So very high sensitivity around making sure that guys were, adequately protected and nobody's going to, be standing up woozy. But in one, there is, say if this is the line and here's too much and here's too little, there's a lot of this type of protection to make sure that, hey, we've been getting pressure and we need that protocol and we need to make sure that guys aren't getting up and playing, right? So like insert Evan's situation. I through the preseason was having a great camp, and then the third third preseason game, going over the middle in the red zone, and just like kind of wasn't looking, and we right. But my perspective of yes, it was from an optics perspective, looked like a bad collision, but stood right up, passed all of my like concussion protocol tests on the field in the locker room the next day, but then was withheld from working. Right, so now I could, or I couldn't play that next week, couldn't practice that next week either. Right, so I had passed all of my team's neurological tests, given that like, hey, can you play? Can't you play? But an independent neuropsychologist that is appointed by the NFL in this first year of this concussion protocol says that, no, probably not yet, right? So, but what's it do when you have a 53-man roster that Evan has made, but you have two guys that now aren't going to be on roster for the first 2 weeks for whatever reason. So you need to bring two so Evan can't play for the first week. So we probably gonna have to. Okay, so now they'll layer deeper into. You get bumped off the 53-man roster, and you were bumped off hurt. You can't practice for. You can't watch film for 6 weeks. You can't eat lunch with the team for 6 weeks. You can't be in the facility at all for 6 weeks. If it's changed, I'm not sure, but this is what it was when I was there. So I say, how am I going to be able to compete at the highest level possible and continue to build my career in football if I'm not even going to be able to go against the next best guys for this long? So with the Tampa Bay Buccaneer workout was second. The first one was with the Patriots, but that process led me to Tampa, and I'm sure you got to be there, but at least that's how I landed there, and was in an environment to start off that was awesome and productive, and I worked from the bottom up to making it on the team, and I definitely there was a lot of proud moments in that year for sure.
And your dad was on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers staff, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So
So
at the
going
time,
from your
my
brother to
dad,
your dad, that's pretty sweet, right?
yeah, having the chance to play on the team that he was coaching on was definitely very, very unique and awesome for sure. But I think part of the reason why the decision was a no-brainer for me is like all growing up, my dad was objective almost to like a him and I fault, right? Like it
Mm-hmm.
would be like so much, and that was the ultimate propeller to success, I think, right? But I knew there was to be a fair shake where I wasn't going to get bumped off injured, and wasn't really because I was injured. Is this situation? Who's really getting like getting an objective fair shake was what I just wanted, because I knew that my athletic abilities were good enough to play and to make it, and I could continue to figure out what I could do there. So I then took the workout under that context, and they were like, "Hey, man, no, you're not going anywhere. We're going to max you out on a practice squad contract, and we want you to be here, learn our system, play with our guys, and we'll see if maybe you fit the team." And throughout the season, I proved that I did.
It's incredible, man. And congratulations on that. Well deserved, as you said. Proved it from the bottom up. I do think it's cool that you got to hang out with your brother for a little bit, then go hang out with your dad.
Yeah,
It's nice. Keep it in the
yeah,
family. It's always more
exactly.
enjoyable. But
It was cool.
that is pretty sweet, getting to share that moment with some of your family, immediate family especially. Definitely makes it just a little bit sweeter. So you were on the Bucks for a year, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So well, I'll let you ask your question. I think I know where it's going now.
Well, what happened? Only a
So
year.
at the end of that season was unfortunately Coach Lovie Smith's last season with Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So out of nowhere, having proved myself with the coach that wanted to bet on me, and then actually had the chance to put me active, and I made plays, and the active game that I played in, he gets fired. Right. So now insert the new head coach, and the new head coach wanted to play from. Let's just say I'm 100% believer in the fact we were all competing for available jobs under the same objective light. And that was frustrating for a lot of reasons that you can probably imagine, right? So me being objective, me having failed, me showing wins, but still being young, right? Like it's still admitting to the faults that I had, still needing to be coached, wanting more than anything to be, have somebody buy into the raw talent and mold it. But more than anything, that was my personal ambitions. Just have an objective to be able to prove that whoever makes it was the fairest one to do so. And great relationship with all the guys that ended up making it, but I didn't feel that I got the fairest shake, right? So past that season, or past that, or after that camp actually ended, I had a conversation with Dirk, and after some how I was let go, but how they told me that I either was on the 53-man roster for just shy of a week, and then before everybody who's on it needs to make game check one, I'm bumped off minutes beforehand. Like, from that side, I just was like, you know what, like I still, as hopefully you've been able to see in this show so far, I can provide intellectual value to the world. I can leave the earth that I stand on in a better place still, right? And that's not 100% dependent on me running an inside nine for you. It's just not. And that was a realization that I had, but then I also coupled that with relationship capital, and realizing that now could be a perfect time to start building out what that other side looks like. And I haven't looked back since.
And there was no, I mean, I remember when Lovie Smith got fired, if I'm not mistaken, it wasn't even after that bad of a year, right? Like 10-6?
Exactly.
Right?
So
Like,
that was the first one. That was the Chicago one.
oh, okay.
The Tampa firing resembled that very much so. But it wasn't, we didn't have a 10-6 season.
Okay.
Tampa still at the time was recovering from being the worst performing team in the league. And then I think we finished just around middle of the pack, right? But climbing, right? Definitely with chemistry, and we won our last couple games. So from that perspective, it was like, why fix what ain't broke, or however the saying goes. But they felt that they could miss out on the coach to be, and they decided to go in that direction. So there were a lot of outcomes that happened after the fact, and my deciding to move on was one of them.
So I mean, obviously this is a bad taste in your mouth, but there was no other like, hey, there's no other teams calling for you. Your agent didn't say, hey, I can get you,
Oh yeah, no,
work
yeah,
out in other places. Like,
there
so what?
definitely were. Yeah, no, I mean there were. Um, the Raiders called my agent a few times. The Chiefs also called my agent. I'm sure there were one or two others. Those are just ones that are most pronounced in my memory. But at that point, it was more about like me deciding that that portion of my legacy, that portion of my overall ability was only going to be so much. And it was the decision to say that now is the time that I'm still young. I still have this unique notoriety value, and I still want to learn finance, right? All of these things, equaled into an equation. If there is execution, if there are the right people to mentor me, is a very high peak, right? And I kind of really desire to know where that peak is now. And only being an athlete was only going to get me so far up that mountain, I guess, is kind of my grander point there.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess from that perspective, when you look at it as only being an athlete, I mean, yeah, there's only so high you can go, right? Like, there is always the opportunity for the sixth round pick to turn into the next greatest thing, but you also have to be very honest with yourself, and understand what's going on. Not to say that you wouldn't have been super successful if you did, just try and put all your might behind it. But at the same time, you're a finance guy. You did the
Yeah,
equation, as you said, and you figured
right.
out, hey, I can take my namesake right now, that capital that I currently have with what I've done, and utilize that for something else where I'm not constantly getting my head bashed in,
Totally.
16 to 19 to 25 weeks a year, whatever it ends up
Yeah,
being. So
yeah.
you made a great decision, because the next part I want to talk about, obviously, the asset management side, and what you've been able to do there. I know you spent some time at Goldman Sachs, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like,
And through their interview process.
okay.
Now,
Oh, that's what
the
it was. The
the
29 interviews or the
exactly
35 interviews, whatever it is.
the 26 of them made it feel as though I was a member of
You
the
were a
team
part of the team at that point.
for six
So,
and a half months. But yeah, no,
yeah.
it was definitely an inclusive experience. Put it that way.
So, yeah, I mean, just the finance side coming from that. I mean, national champion only a few years earlier, moving back to Columbus, right, and understanding
Mhm.
kind of what's going on there. You were very smart with it, right? You went
Yeah,
somewhere where you have a very good name, where you can say and point and say, hey, I did that. Like, hey guys, I
totally.
did that. You want to have a conversation? I'm sure way more people are willing to have those conversations. So, what was that first part like, getting back to Columbus and saying, like, okay, this is what I want to do. Now, let me start building up that relationship capital so that I can
Yeah.
get to where I want to go.
I mean, for me, it was like I realized that operational finance was a passion of mine, right? So, like learning how to deliver returns by adding value type of things. So, I was an operator for a year and a half. I had international portfolio management experience, an associate at a venture capital firm. Then, for another, just shy of a year before that, and then launched the fund, right? So, from that side of things, throughout that process, I got to build that learning by doing experience as an operator. And let's say 10% of that is going to be the lessons learned to implement going on, and 90% of that is failures. Not to say that that's accurate, but it's a better depiction on what people probably perceive as let's go do and start something. That's raw, organic. If I had a Phillips head flat thread screwdriver, I was talking about, like now we got a ratchet over here, and that's that because uh, you know, oh shit, I guess I lost my train of thought. What was I just mentioning?
Talking about ratchets and screwdriver. No, the
Before the
operational.
screwdrivers.
I know operational
Yeah.
finance and the
Yeah. So
10%,
I'm
90% failure.
exactly. So I'm talking about just what I did to build my breadth of experience. My examples, evade my thinking sometimes, but I wanted to build events that I could either succeed or fail in, so that I could do the same thing that I did in football, learn from it, not do it again, and then build on that portfolio. I had great mentors and still do have great mentors, one of which got the chance to do this behind billion-dollar portfolios. They got to manage and commercialize product for 39 of the biggest companies in the world, right? And this is one of my dearest business mentors. So now that I get to learn through operational finance. Now that I get to do a lot of those international business experience things that I was talking about, I can pour those examples off of things that he's experienced. And oh, by the way, now he's the chairman of the board, on our front, or on our fund. Sorry. So my private equity business now in its first fund is investing in real estate properties. So from an acquisition standpoint, from best practices in and out of deals, ways to structure things to make sure that our investors are taken care of, as best possible, and not relying solely on my ability to ask and to know the right answers, but building a team around me to kind of support those right answers is, kind of where we now, how I've grown this thing. But, I think the 90-20 thing is just an example of like how I can take percent now and apply it to relative examples. And Michael, our board chairman, who I was mentioning, to things that he's had. And now, as we continue to grow and scale our real estate fund, apply that into the fund for the shareholders that are within it. Right? So, I think that's kind of been my path and reasons as to why it's been important to learn through different functions.
It makes sense. I mean, you have to learn, you have to fail, especially in finance, something like that. No one's coming in batting 1,000 in finance, because if you did, we'd all be billionaires, right? Like that's too easy. So it makes sense that you've gone through, you've went to multiple places, you did all these different things to learn along the way, to kind of allow yourself in certain situations to do the wrong thing. Not allow yourself, but make a decision, find out, hey, I can't, let's not do that anymore. So you can start Xing out ideas until you really do find that one path that, okay, this is what I'm good at. This is what I want to do, and these are the people that are going to help me there. You just made it, a great point, and I want to, analogize it, make it an analogy to football. There we go. I'm not great with words. I'm good at talking, not great with words. Is that a word?
We're close enough.
If we made a word up,
we'll call Webster after this.
I was just about to say we'll talk to Webster about it. But I mean, as you said, like you can't do everything by yourself on a football team. A coach needs the correct players to run a specific scheme, right? Mm-hmm. So you by yourself can't do much, but if you have the correct players to push you and get you in the right direction, you have the offensive line blocking in the correct way, so that the quarterback can see the wide open receiver. That is all necessary. All of those things are not interchangeable. All those things are pieces required to that puzzle. Exactly. They're required. And that's exactly what you're doing now. You're getting all these correct people in the right places, letting them do what they do best. So that way you can say, hey, this is my vision. You guys, let's all together push and get there so that we can complete this puzzle together. I think that's awesome, man. And, I only mentioned it once, but CEO Project Alpha, and you're clearly doing some really cool things, man. And I love it. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to hang out with you today was to talk about your football career a little bit. But the other reason was to talk about this. So specifically, I don't know how deep you want to go, how shallow, or
you're good.
What exactly are you doing with Project Alpha? I know you mentioned real estate. I know you and I spoke about the cannabis side a little bit. So, what through these kind of ups and downs, kind of the trial and error through what you found throughout your asset or your finance career, what made you want to start this fund, and then where is this fund going?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, first, what made me want to start the fund realistically boils back again down to my passions for operational finance and leading teams, right? Leading high scale, high productive teams. So post playing, it's that question, what do you want to do? What's the legacy you want to leave? I have a passion for finance. I love operational finance to where we can deliver returns, add value. And I know that I can lead an organization very well. I've done it in practice on the other side. So let's just figure out what this relationship capital can, what our assets are going to be from getting myself into Ohio. So, coming here and realizing that, hey, I have a passion. I want to start a private equity business, but there's a few holes that I'm going to have if my business wants to get into cannabis. So I kind of roundabout talking about the why or the what behind the private equity business, but I want to start very simple, if that's okay. The fund that we have active right now is a commercial real estate fund investing in some of the most well-capitalized cannabis operators in the country, period. complicated than that. Now, getting deeper, which I think is going to be productive in terms of analyzing what Project Alpha is, there is more depth, right? So in our first fund, that's just real estate. So traditional real estate, you get paid every month via your lease agreement. That's how we get paid. We just back our risk behind some of the most well-capitalized companies in a given industry that we do business in. And there's easing regulations and opportunities will continue to scale, and those equity positions have appreciation potential. So there's a lot of evaluation there. In terms of the business of private equity, or in terms of the business of Project Alpha, we also realized that that relationship with a company that might be one of the highest valued companies in its given industry is valuable from the standpoint of providing them the building that they need to scale and providing them operational capital for the business itself, right? So while Fund One is not investing in the business or making in the business investments, nor do we want to, right? Or we have a fiduciary duty to where we can't. But the strategy of our business is to say that if we can cash flow off of their building, build relationships, analyze their financials and the performance that they have, the data, whether it's growing through our spaces or just other organic metrics that we have, we can say, hey, we have a relationship we've built for the last X number of months, and we want to invest in them from an operational perspective. So without having that connection, we have to pay to do due diligence throughout time. So that's not a cash positive relationship. Whereas our structure, we can, in Fund One, provide real estate to all of the biggest companies, which majority of conservative commercial real estate investors that want access to the industry are looking for. But then we're saying, hey guys, we know we have relationship value here. These very same companies might be targets here in a few months, right? So our business is going to be add value to all of our equity positions. And our private equity business has a space in both of those categories. Now, deeper than that, there's an advisory portion that obviously advises the positions to add value to them, right? Hey, we want to go across the country. Okay, well, let me help you do that type of thing. But very structural to what it is. It is the real estate portion and the traditional private equity business.
That's awesome, man. That is so smart. I mean, I'm not a finance guy, but I can see the path on how this works and the steps and how you laid it out. First, you did a great job at explaining it, so thank you for that. But I mean, just the way you lay it out and the understanding of how these things kind of, how again, puzzle pieces fit together, and making sure that you're not spending the money to look at the books. No, we have the relationship so we can let them know, hey, we're here for you. Let us help.
Exactly.
You, not only are you adding value to the company, you're adding value to your clients. You're adding value in terms of relationships. You're doing so much more, and without having to spend the money to do it. So that's awesome, man. And I'm sure some of that was you. I'm sure some of that was your mentors. But however it happened, and now you're here, and now you're doing some cool stuff, man.
I mean, so the best relationships that you can ever think of are the ones where they're two-way streets, where you're saying, hey, I'm here to help in any way that I can help. Just say the word. Let's do it.
100%. I completely agree, man. And that's how I try and structure all my relationships, personal, business, anything. As you've seen, we had one conversation, and my goal is to help you in one way, shape, or form, because now you're helping me by coming on the show and hanging out with me. I know I'm taking up a little bit of your time, but it's been a blast. Totally. So I hope you're having fun too. But I mean, it's so cool to see kind of how that stuff mentally, you can kind of start putting that stuff together. And you're totally correct. The best relationships are two-way streets, and where everybody's here to help. Rising tide lifts all boats. I don't know of any other cliches you can think of. But I think it's awesome the way you're structuring it. So I guess the next question is, why the cannabis industry? With it being fledgling, with it being, yes, as you said, there's new opportunities coming up, what look like monthly, but there's also the governmental effect of they can snap their fingers, and all that stuff is very hard to come by. So with that being risky, why the cannabis industry, and why at this stage?
Yeah. So from the standpoint of why the cannabis industry, first it starts from my passions as to why, like what difference I wanted to make in finance, right? So that start was to say that there needs to be more people in finance utilizing their mechanisms from a standpoint of sustainability, good, whatever adjective you want to throw in there, But one of the first things that I noted was medicine, so alternative forms of medicine. And I looked at the cannabis industry as an industry to where if there is an intellectual capital, if there is capital going into projects that are delivering some form of application that are bettering lives, that are saving lives, or giving at least an alternative, more healthy version to dealing with something, I want to be able to leave that imprint. So that's the emotional side of it. Now, as it relates to the industry, the individual I haven't yet had a chance to mention, which is another, whole cover, right? This is my other corner. If Michael's my left corner, he's my right corner. Adam Mintz. Adam Mintz has been in the cannabis industry for 12 years, has had industry experience across the board, but most importantly, was the individual who put pen to paper for regulations that were adopted by the federal government, right? So he has sweat equity into working with out west, the Western Conference Attorneys Generals, right? So working with regulators at how this industry scales through time. So now if I have that position in an industry, naturally the entrepreneurs and the opportunities that I am presented with will be curated towards the top. So Adam has built his practice, and right now the commercial real estate firm that they've grown with his partner, Charlotte Heimer, is a $135 million practice in assets under management, right? So, he's figured out ways to, like we've talked about, utilize his assets in a way that says, I'm in this industry, I have relationships with the top, let's provide real estate for the top. So that's point two. As it relates to the regulations, point three, we have that standard deviation away from in the business investment. So I went on this long ordeal about private equity investments into into actual businesses themselves, operational investments. But that's also a step two for strategic reasonings. We need also ease of regulation. So in Fund One, that standard deviation away says we are traditional landlords. If we play the world stops spinning example and these companies can no longer pay rent, I own an industrial facility or I own a retail location that can very well have somebody go in and make gray giant shirts with blue NY on the right and left arm. And though it's a ton of work, though it'll be a lot of late nights from our team's perspective, that's our business, that's our company, right? So that's also how we've mitigated that risk in the first fund. So I hope that kind of holistically gives a perspective.
Definitely. I love the fact the medical view that you're taking on it. I think it is awesome. I think it's something that should have been done a very long time ago, but as we know, that's not how the world works, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. So, hopefully there's something, obviously, as we've talked about, it's happening, it's changing, the views are changing. So, hopefully one of these days, it will have its place in medicine more so than it currently does. But I think, what you're doing is awesome, man.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No.
I think it's important to also look at it, and this is long for a lot of reasons, and hopefully it's beneficial from an information perspective. But Safe Banking Act is an act that's is a bill that's currently proposed to the Senate that at some point, whether it be in 6 to 12 to 18 to 24 months, will have its chance to be voted on in the Senate. In the House, it passed 320 some odd to 190, and this gives federal protection to banks to do business with marijuana-related businesses. What that means is that there is no regulatory requirement crackdown that's going to happen on any of the operators we do business with. But that also brings me another point of saturation. How do you address or target the fact that if that bill gets passed, won't it be easier for your company A to go get and receive money? And I say it 100% will. Will we see cap rate compression? Absolutely. Will we see the equity value of our companies increase because their ability to sell more product and increase their value will increase? Yes, right. But more importantly, I guess just like my grander point is just the fact that as regulations ease, we will be that strategic cannabis partner, right? So again, to my value that I was mentioning earlier, we have access to the most well-capitalized companies in the industry. We've been providing to them for X months, right? A Goldman or a JP Morgan or another banking institution like that that doesn't want to spend the time to go build out an ops team to learn everything in the industry and then internalize all their investment processes. They want to go find managers that have teams that can cover all of their areas. Well, guess who's been doing that for X number of years and months? So that's kind of the strategy and positioning on a state banking sector.
Again, this is just stacking and stacking, and
Yeah.
the way you thought this out, and the way that this is just, again, this is not my industry. I was in finance for a couple of years. I hated it. I got out very quickly. But like, just the way
Yeah.
you've been able to explain this, and the very clear marks along the map and along the path that you've said, okay, this is what we did, and then the next portion is this, and the next portion is this, and then we have this and this. Now you have all like 6 layers. It's very vertically integrated, where someone's going to come to you, and you're pretty much going to be able to handle all of it and figure out all of it. And you guys are going to make a boatload of money doing it, which is very well deserved, because you put the time, the energy, and all the relationships.
Totally.
You have the risk mitigation factor, as you said. You own the land, so
Yeah.
it's not like it's just going to like not be there one day. Like,
Yeah.
it might not
Right.
be used for this, but it's going to be used, right? Someone's
Yeah.
going to use it. So, I mean, I love it, man. You're clearly doing some really cool stuff, and rocking along with it. So I appreciate
and
that.
as are you, man. I
Hey,
definitely want to get a little bit on your talent game, right? I mean, I think that anybody who is as forward enough to be able to get insightful opinions from people who have such diverse stories, right? Blend that into something that's can be communicated to the populace, but then like figuring out ways to build a structure and an organization behind that execution. Like, that takes a lot of hardworking talent. So, on your side too, right? Like, props to you as well.
thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, this it's difficult, but it's so much fun that I literally woke up today. I said, I get to do this. Like, this is awesome. I cannot
Yeah.
wait. Let's go. And
Yeah.
maybe I laid in bed for an extra couple minutes because it was really chilly this morning here in New Jersey.
Yeah,
But we got up. I had my cup of coffee and I started rocking it, man. So it's awesome. Sincerely appreciate the kind words. So I guess the last question on Project Alpha. What is like the long-term vision, because you've only been doing this for like a year and change now, right?
Yeah.
So
We've only been, exactly.
you're this far along already. So I'm sure from talking to you for the last hour and change, and our previous conversation, what is that far off 10, 15, 20-year vision look like for what you guys are trying to do?
Uh, 2 examples would give a great perspective. I had 26 interviews with Goldman, so I understand what the Goldman standard looks like. Do I have experience in stories from working there for X number of years? No, but I understand from an institutional capital standpoint what that looks like. On the private equity side, what it takes is a book written by Steve Schwartzman, CEO of Blackstone, one of the most successful private equity businesses across the globe. Right, talks a lot about how they grew their business. So,
wait, what's the name of that book?
What It Takes. Great
Okay.
book. I would read it. Just, I mean, it's from anything else, it's just a great story.
Writing it down. So thank you.
But I think coupling those 2 ideals in 10 years are exactly where I'm building Project Alpha 2. Relating it back to the long monologues that I've had in this show, I would say that it boils itself down into 3 buckets: our real estate business, our private equity business, and our advisory business. Right. So in 10 years, we will be scaling that. So our real estate business can cash flow for its investors and for potential operational investments. Right. And we don't have to only apply this model to cannabis. Right. That could be SaaS, that could be energy, that could be et cetera. Right. So applying that model to an area where we have a 10 out of 10 in order to facilitate the business. There's a Steve Schwarzman quote there. You'll kind of get a bit of that if you read it. But Michael Giuliano, right, worked with 39 of the biggest companies in the world and worked for TPG and Blackstone. 10 out of 10. Lean manufacturing curriculum. He's the patent holder. 10 out of 10. You need to work from building a private equity business. You're going to work with you're going to work with manufacturing facilities. You need him. 10 out of 10. Adam Mintz wrote set the laws for the industry in its state expansion plan. 10 out of 10. Access to top flow of deal flow. 10 out of 10. Now, as you look into government relations or investor relations or SaaS as an investment industry or multifamily potential, homes as an investment category, right? We are going to look for those 10 out of 10s that want to join a scaling organization that has the foresight to get in on the tidal wave that is the cannabis industry, and let that feed the organization to come.
I love it. It's awesome, man. I mean, again, like that, it just, that huddle has to be insane. Whoever's calling those plays, it just must be, Urban Meyer, Scott Frost, just saying, you know what, whatever, just figure it out, just go with it. Because clearly the talent that you have amassed is insane. And what you're able to do with it, again, relationships are, after I got out of business school, I quickly found out it's who you know. I mean, it's obviously you're going to learn on the job as you have. And that's why, you went through that kind of trial and error phase before you really started this, but it's who you know, and it's how you can help them so that they want to help you back. And clearly you did something and you helped them, and now they're on your side, and they're giving some time and some energy and relationship capital back to you. And clearly you are absolutely running with it, man. So I love it.
Yeah.
This is great.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I'm glad I could, share my story.
Yeah, man. It's awesome.
And fit the mold.
I had a blast. I have actually one last question. So you brought up a foundation earlier. Do you have a foundation?
No. Right. I lost my train of thought twice because I go on these rampage. That was one of the I was just mentioning foundations as
generally,
potential placeholder of something.
Love it. But clearly, you're still helping the world in some capacity, in multiple capacities. It looks like, so that's good enough for me. I'm sure you will have one day that you're very passionate about, and you can help, especially through the business, because that's what people love looking at now is that extra layer of, okay, you're helping the world, but what else are you doing, and how else are you doing it? And through a foundation is always a very easy place to go. Plus, tax savings are good. But anyway, Evan, this was absolutely fantastic. One more time, Evan Spencer, 2014 national champ of OSU, played for the Redskins, played for the Buccaneers, CEO of Project Alpha. Evan, this was awesome, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Ton of fun, man. Thanks so much for having me.